Hi, my love. Welcome back to the podcast. It has definitely been a hot minute and a half. So, this is the first episode back after quite a bit of a podcast pause, if you will. And to be quite honest with you, I've been kind of waiting for the right moment, the right energy, the right breath to re-enter. And so if you're new here, hi, I'm Elaine. I'm an energy healer. I am a RIM guide and channel. I'm a guide for women who are ready to return to themselves, women who are expanding, unraveling, softening, repatterning, and everything in between. And so if you've been with me for a while, thank you. Thank you for still being here and sticking with me through the pauses. And that's just life sometimes, isn't it? That really, thank you for being here still. I do not take that lightly. So I guess I wanted this episode back to be something kind of foundational, right? Because there's some new faces here. So I wanted this to be something that reorientates you, right? To the why behind my work and the what, especially for all of those beautiful new faces, for the curious ones, and for those of you who are really, feeling that nudge to go a bit deeper, but aren't quite sure where to begin, right? So today's episode, we're going to be talking about exactly what I actually do. We'll talk about Reiki, talk about channeling, and talk about RIM, and why these practices have genuinely changed my life and the lives of so many women that I've had the privilege and the honor to work with. So this won't be fluffy by any means. It won't be vague, but it will be gentle and hopefully very expansive for you. So my love, settle in and let's kick this off together. So just a revisit, I suppose, into how I got here, right? I didn't grow up thinking I'd become a healer. I was the little girl that loved the crystal shops, but I didn't ever once think, when I grow up, I'm going to be a healer. In fact, I was trained to do pretty much the complete opposite. Well, maybe not complete opposite, but definitely not in healer training. So I thought. So my background is in nursing. I spent years working in hospital systems, right? Seeing people, somewhat in crisis, right? And learning the mechanics of the body, understanding medicine, treatment plans, pain scales, procedures, particularly procedures, because I was a scrub nurse or an OR or a theatre nurse. But underneath all of that, there was this quiet knowing, right? Like I knew I wanted to help people. So potentially there was a part of me that was connected to being a healer, but I knew I wanted to help people. But, there was just something that wasn't quite hitting the mark when I was in nursing. I could feel when something wasn't just physical, right? Like I could feel when symptoms were coming up, or even, whether this was with patients or in conversation with colleagues, like in that environment, right? Where things were pointing to something deeper than what we were seeing on the surface. And this is something that nobody was talking about. And to be quite honest, I had tried to ignore it for years, and I've always been the kind of person that I can meet you in one moment and the next moment you're telling me your deepest, darkest secrets and you don't know why, you don't know how, but you just feel like you need to get it out. And I'm somebody that you can get it out to. And I love that. But for the longest time, I didn't understand it. Because you think about that, right? Like sensing energy or feeling other people's emotions in my own body, that wasn't evidence-based, right? There wasn't a study that I was reading about that made sense of it all. Like it wasn't on the chart. But this is something that I really want you to remember, right? Like the body knows. It always knows. And eventually mine knew that it was time to change. So, like what looked like a stable life, a successful life on the outside, career, relationship, structure, felt like it was slowly, ever so slowly, suffocating the life out of me. I felt disconnected from myself. I didn't even know what a connection with self meant or felt like in the first place. I was disconnected from my joy, from the softness I used to know, from that playful energy as a little girl. It felt so far away. And the tools that I had at the time just weren't working. And so that's when I started to explore energy work. At first, it was very quiet, and I didn't call it energy work. It was, oh, hi, I'm going to go and work with a life coach, and yeah, maybe I'll do some morning pages and some journaling, and maybe I'll read this book by this random woman, quote unquote, she laughs, this random woman, Gabby Bernstein. Like, The Universe Has Your Back, that book was everything for me. It opened up so many things. So when I say I started quietly and then more deeply, that's what happened. Someone actually, this is wild. Someone, and I say someone, it was a dear friend of mine. And this was like much later in my journey. I was already running my own business, and, I was working as a coach. I was working as a life coach, a mindset coach, a little bit of health coaching in there, a business coach. And I was just kind of really starting to explore the depths of my gifts. And there was part of me that wasn't really fully embodied in it because I didn't understand it all. I didn't have a mentor to help guide me at the time. And a friend of mine actually gave me a crystal one day. I was visiting and we caught up, and she gave me a lapis lazuli crystal, and something happened. We were having lots of conversations around business and, accessing my gifts and what it meant and how I could help other people by using them. And yeah, like I said, it cracked something open in me, and I started to understand that there was a whole inner world that I'd been suppressing. Yes, I was aware of the energy work. I was meditating. I was, doing RIM sessions, but I was doing them in isolation. And as you'll hear shortly, that's not how I operate. And so, there was like a whole way of supporting people that I didn't really allow myself to explore fully until this moment. But yeah, something changed in me in that trip and in that conversation with my friend. And, not long after that, I think, was it after that, or maybe like just prior to that, like around the same time, was when I really started to open myself up and explore Reiki. So, I had experienced Reiki, I'd received Reiki before, but there was something that was still kind of like closed off to me. And so around this time is when Reiki found me, or maybe I remembered it and its beautiful, beautiful magic and beautiful power. And, and later on, I was still using RIM, but there was this strange thing, I guess, that happened in me when I realized that I wasn't to do things in isolation. I was to do things in a way that felt good to me, and not by a rule book or not by an instruction manual or not by, anybody else's rules. And it's very like in human design, it's very 3-5 of me. Like I pick up the things that land for me and I leave the rest. And then I just weave them all together. And that's basically how my entire body of work actually works. So, I realized that I was really waiting for this moment, for this realization that, all of it can work together. And it's I guess healing that meets the body, it meets the nervous system, and it meets the subconscious. It's healing that moves faster than the mind sometimes. And so what I want to do now is I want to talk to you about the different elements of what I do and how it basically all works together. And so firstly, I want to talk about Reiki, or, you might refer to it, and I often refer to it as universal healing. And so maybe you've seen the word or these words floating around online, maybe in Pinterest quotes or on Instagram, or, beautiful softly lit reels showing hands hovering over a body. beautiful, beautiful imagery. And while that is all very common, it doesn't always, explain the depth of what Reiki or universal healing actually is, right? Like at its essence, it's simply energy healing. It's based on the understanding that we're all energetic beings. There's a life force, a current moving through and around us. So in Chinese medicine, they call it qi. In yoga, it's prana. In the language of science, they talk about frequency and vibration, right? But so when that energy flows freely, we feel centered, we feel regulated, we feel clear. And when it becomes blocked, whether that's from stress or grief, trauma, overthinking, anyone, burnout, or, even from spending too much time in other people's energy and not clearing it, it can get a little sticky, shall we say. And that stickiness can show up in the body and in the mind in all kinds of ways. Fatigue, fog, a tight chest, a racing mind, a thumping heartbeat, a feeling of being off without actually knowing why. And so Reiki or universal healing, energy healing, gently clears that stagnation. It softens the edges, it settles the nervous system, and it really reminds the body how to come back to a state of rest and wholeness. Not by forcing anything to happen by any means, but just by allowing what needs to move to move. So in a session with me, you'll either join me online or in person, and you'll lie down, or maybe you're sitting up, again, whatever feels comfortable for you. So like I said, yes, either in person or online, and I will come back to the online bit in a minute. But from there, I basically work with your energy body. I'll hover my hands over, key energy points, or maybe I will rest them gently on the body depending on what feels right for you and the energy in that moment. And obviously that is for in-person sessions, and I'm not using my own energy, right? Like I'm channeling universal energy, and your system is choosing exactly what it's ready to receive. And so, of course, with all of this, I'm working closely with the chakra system, right? And in traditional mainstream teaching, I guess, there's 7 main energetic centers. Like there are a lot more chakras in our system, but I want to keep it really simple here and foundational. So we work with 7 main ones that basically correlate with different aspects of your physical, emotional, and spiritual body. And so during session, I'm basically tuning in to what feels open, what feels blocked, what feels overactive or underactive, and I'll support your system to rebalance in a way that feels really safe and natural for you, not for anyone else, just for you and your system. So, you might feel heat, you might feel a tingling or a deep stillness. Maybe you feel a lightness, you might see colors or images or memories, or maybe you don't feel much at all. And that's totally fine. It's absolutely okay. What you experience in the moment is perfect for you. But either way, you walk away with a softness that you haven't felt in a while. And, Reiki, universal healing, energy healing, it's not dramatic, right? It's not loud, but it's undeniable once you feel it in your system. And, after every session, I reflect on what came through. I'll reflect on it with you in session as we finish up, and I'll share what I noticed in your chakras and any, intuitive impressions that were present, and a few gentle ways that you can continue to support your integrations that follow, right? And, I don't necessarily just do it at the end. It'll come through during session, and maybe I'm hovering over your heart space and something is coming through, and I will give that to you in the moment, right? And so just coming back to the online versus in person, yes, this works just as powerfully online, right? Because think about that, right? Energy doesn't obey geography. It doesn't require physical proximity. So whether you're lying on a healing table in front of me or curled up at home in your bed, the energy will still move because your body knows how to receive it, right? Your body knows how to receive it. And, so basically when I'm in session with someone, I'll have a set of chakra crystals in front of me. And so instead of hovering my hands over your body in person, I'm hovering my hands over those particular crystals that are in line with where your body would be, basically, And honestly, some of the most profound sessions that I've ever held have happened over Zoom, because you're in your own familiar, comfortable environment. And sometimes you can drop even deeper, right? Energy work, energy healing, universal healing, Reiki, all of this. It's beautiful when you're feeling dysregulated, heavy, or unclear, but it's equally powerful when you're growing and when you're evolving or you're calling in more, right? And that's the thing, I say this to my clients, and I do this myself. Right. When I book in for a session with my healer, I will book, a month in advance, 2, 3, 4 months in advance, whatever it might be. And I don't necessarily know what I'm booking for, but I know I need to be there for my own well-being, my own energetic maintenance, right? I treat it, and I was saying this to a client the other day, I treat it like a hairdresser appointment. Like there is no way that I cancel my hairdresser appointment ever. Like no way, unless it's like, there's some drama and I absolutely cannot make it. But I can be on my deathbed and I will make sure that I am keeping that hairdresser appointment. And so I treat my healing appointments or my healing sessions with my own healer exactly the same way. It's like sometimes you rock up to the hairdresser and you're like, you know what, let's cut it all off today, or let's go blonde today, or whatever it might be. You don't know necessarily until you get there and something hits you and you're like, yeah, I this is what I want, or this is what I need. And it's not always about like planning ahead. Sometimes it's about just being in the space to be held for your own energetic maintenance, for your own growth and your own evolution. So yeah, this is, I guess, a little reminder that, energy healing isn't just about fixing what's quote unquote wrong, right? Or what feels wrong. It's about expanding your capacity for what's next as well. It's really about creating more like spaciousness in your system for your next level, your next season, your next chapter, your next version of self to actually land. So there's also like another element to my my healing sessions, or all my sessions really, that I haven't talked about much yet, and that's actually channeling. So alongside, the energetic work, I often receive messages for my clients, like messages that come through from your highest self, your spirit guides, or your wider support team, on the other side, so to speak, or, connected in the universe, however that lands in your body, and I want to be really clear here. There is a big difference. I'm not a psychic. Like I don't predict futures. I can't tell you in 17 days at 3:57 p.m. You're going to win the lotto, or like, whatever it is. I'm a channel, which means I receive information that flows through me in the moment for your highest good. And because it comes through me, not from me, I want you to hear that difference, right? It comes through me, not from me. It's not uncommon for me to forget, right? Like I may not remember it later, the messages that come through. So if you ask me the next day what I said about that specific sentence, there's a high chance I probably won't remember it. And it's not because I don't care by any means. It's because those words weren't mine and they weren't for me. They were channeled. I was the vessel, so to speak, not the author. So they weren't for me, they were for you. And sometimes, the messages come through in ways that feel a little surprising as well, even for my clients. Like for me, yes, but even for my clients, like I've had clients feel, and I have felt this myself, right? Like I've had clients feel initially like triggered or confused or resistant. Not only like just to feel a little bit like shocked, almost like, wow, that was really direct, or where did that come from? That doesn't sound like you. And then only to realize like days or weeks later that the message itself landed exactly as it needed to, and like I said, I have experienced this myself so many times. I remember like years ago when I first saw my my own healer and mentor, she channeled something for me, and I'm laughing because it's just like, of course this happened, but she channeled something for me that really frustrated me so deeply that like I almost completely dismissed it entirely. Like I was like, that does not resonate. Like that's not okay. Like no, I'm not like, like I had my back up and it was just like, no. But if you think, like I even think about it now still when I'm sharing this story, but the emotional response it brought up in me cracked something open. And because of that crack, I made changes. I took action. And those changes led me straight to the thing that I'd been asking for all along. And I remember bringing it up with her, months later and saying, I remember you said this to me and I really struggled and with how she's like, I don't remember that. And it was in these moments, and I was talking to a friend about it as well, like she's not a channel, she's not a psychic, she's a channel. And it really, really landed in me. And so, basically that's how channeled guidance works, or at least how it works for me. And it's not always convenient, and it's not always convenient, or it's not always soft, but it's always, always offered with love, right? And I really need you to hear that. It's always offered with love and for your highest good, and in a way that your system is ready to hear. If your system wasn't ready to hear it, it would not be delivered. I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't hear it. I wouldn't deliver it in that way. And like keep in mind that every channel works a little differently. And, this is a little bit more of a breakdown of how mine works, like I don't always see, or rather I don't always get names or long narratives about guides that show up, or, guardians, or, whatever name that you want to give to them. Like I'm very, very, very visual. So I usually see energy first, right? I'll see a presence or a feeling or a sensation in the room, or even sometimes a color, not always, but sometimes. And then from there, that energy kind of begins to form into something a little bit clearer. And then from there, I'll often start to hear a bit of a message. And it's not necessarily a message in English. Like I then have to sort of almost like I hear the energy. And it sounds a little strange, but this is how it works for me. Like I'll hear the energy, I'll see it, and then I'll hear it. And then I kind of translate it into words that you can understand and then integrate. And it's interesting, right? Because sometimes you'll be like guided to speak with a guide or an ancestor or your higher self. And sometimes it'll just feel like this beautiful, intuitive knowing or gentle nudge. But whatever comes through and however it comes through is always held with such deep love and care. And I only ever share what feels supportive and safe for you where you are in your journey, right? Because sometimes I'll hear things and I'll know that part of that is for you and part of it is for me to support you in how you hear the message that I deliver. So just keep in mind that if you hear something during a session that feels really powerful, write it down. Let it move through you, right? And if it doesn't make sense right away, trust that it may unfold in layers over time. And equally, you get to take what resonates and leave the rest. And when it's time for you to pick the rest of it back up, it will appear again. What's for you will never miss you or never pass you by. So I guess this channeling element is, it's, wow, just catches my breath a little bit, right? It's a deeply personal part of how I work. And while it's not something that I can predict or control, it's often what makes the sessions themselves feel so intimate and so resonant and so precisely timed, right? It's just magic. That's how I want to describe it. Oh, all right. So with that, I now want to shift gears and talk about another modality I use, and that's called RIM, which stands for Regenerating Images in Memory. Now, it's not wildly known, not like Reiki or breath work or anything like that, but I believe it's one of the most powerful healing modalities available for emotional and subconscious work. So RIM is basically, it's a subconscious healing process. It allows us to gently access and rewrite emotional memories. So the ones that sit below the surface and still shape how we think, how we relate, how we react and respond. And so originally, it was developed for people experiencing PTSD, right? So that they could move through or move beyond trauma without actually having to relive it, right? Because how awful would that be? But the way that I hold it now and the way that so many other practitioners have evolved it is to support healing across a whole spectrum of emotional experiences. So things like repeating patterns or inner resistance, limiting beliefs, shame, guilt, self-doubt, emotional suppression. It's always a big one. Grief. And that, that unshakable feeling of like feeling stuck even after you've, quote, unquote, done the work. And, it's really interesting because, whilst I'm trained, like this is the thing I was kind of alluding to before. I don't use really any modality in isolation because I'm trained in so many different modalities. The way I hold RIM is very, very intuitive. I'll often gently weave in some subtle energy healing. I may tune into your chakra system, track any areas of tightness or stagnation. I might even channel while we're doing a RIM session. Again, it's all dependent on the energy and the individual. But basically the idea is always just to clear or rebalance as I go. And so while we're in a RIM session, while you're in the process, I take notes, right? I take a lot of notes, and it's not necessarily to give you at the end because you probably won't be able to read my handwriting. And sometimes I'm actually sketching certain things, but the notes that I take are beautiful in the sense of they allow us to tune into anything that needs your attention post-session, right? So once we finish up, I'll then share any reflections at the end that need to come through for you. Maybe I'll share with you what chakras need ongoing support, what themes came through, anything that I picked up along the way, and of course, any ways that I feel like you can gently support your integration process as well. Because that's the thing, right? This isn't just a standalone session, right? It's a shift. And integration actually matters. It's a huge part of how the entire process works. And so, I guess with that, I want to kind of come back to how the process actually feels, because this is where RIM becomes its own kind of magic, right? This isn't talk therapy. Whilst there's a place for it, that this is not what RIM is. We're not intellectualizing or analyzing. You don't need to explain your entire life story, right? We're essentially, as we go into a session, I'm kind of getting you to put your conscious mind on the bench, or put it in the waiting room. Give it I always used to use the analogy of we're just going to give your conscious mind the Game Boy or the iPad to play with while we speak directly to your higher self through your subconscious mind. So that's the point, right? You don't need to explain your entire life story to me. In fact, some of the deepest sessions that I've guided started with just one word, one intention, whether the word is tight, stuck, small, angry, tired, whatever it might be, or the intention is I need to feel free again, and then from there, the body leads the way. The body leads the way. RIM is it is very, very interactive, right? It's not passive in any way. It's co-led. You are fully involved in the entire experience. I'll ask you questions, but not in a traditional coaching kind of way. These questions are designed to bring your subconscious forward very gently, very safely. You'll speak, you'll feel, you'll express, sometimes through memories, sometimes through sensations, and sometimes through metaphors and images that don't make sense to the mind. They don't make any logical sense, but they are perfect for the body. And this is the thing, I'll remind you throughout the session, it doesn't need to make any sense. It doesn't need to make any logical sense, whatever, or whatsoever. You just get to speak what is coming through for you. And so, in a RIM session, you might find yourself speaking to a younger version of yourself, or a future version, or your higher self, or a particular guide, a grandparent, maybe an animal, even an inanimate object, right? Like my very first room session, and you might have heard this, heard me tell this story before, but in my very first room session as a client, I it included a strawberry named George, right? Who helped me unpack my self-worth. Yes, really. See, it makes no logical sense, right? But what matters isn't what it looks like. What matters is that it gives voice to a part of you that's never had space to speak or hasn't had space to speak in a long time. And when that happens, when you meet a feeling with safety and give it space to move, like real emotional release actually becomes possible. You know, my clients, they'll cry, laugh, some get angry, some feel joy and uncontrollable laughter, right? Many experience the full spectrum of emotion in one session, and that is so welcome, and it is so safe to do so because we're shifting energy through the emotional body, which means there's no right way to feel, right? Everything is valid, and every release is a kind of return, right? And so, like, one of the things people often ask is, like, does it feel like hypnotherapy? And the answer is, like, not really. You're fully conscious throughout, right? Your eyes are closed, yes, but you can speak, you can open your eyes, you can shift your body, and you're never in like a trance state. There's no counting in or out. You are in control the entire time. And like I always remind my clients, if a distraction happens, if someone walks into the room, the dog barks, the doorbell rings, it just becomes part of the process, right? RIM really reflects what's going on in your internal landscape. So external interruptions can often mirror what's trying to be seen or moved. So we work with it, we adapt to it. Nothing is ever wrong, right? And it's always a good thing to remember. And so after your session, that's when integration begins. And, you know, like integration looks different for everyone and it can look different from session to session for the same person. Some people feel really energized and ready to move, ready to create, take action, all of that beautiful energy. And others will feel a pull inward, you know, needing more rest, more stillness, more softness. There is like literally, there's no formula, there's no timeline, there's no one size fits all pathway, right? And I guess that's why I always share a few like intuitive suggestions after each session, like what to notice, how to honor what's shifting, and how to stay connected to the work in the days that follow. Because RIM isn't like, it's not about one big breakthrough. It's about learning how to meet your own energy with presence and really trusting what rises to the surface is actually ready to be shifted, to be moved, to be released, right? Every session is different. Every person is different, and your experience will be your own. But the thing that I can promise is that it will always be held with love and with care, and you'll leave with more of you than when you arrived. And I think that in itself is really special. And so I guess like another question that I get asked a lot is like, how do I know if this work is for me? And the thing to remember is, you know, you don't need to be in a crisis to book a session. You don't need to be falling apart or waiting for things to feel unbearable either. This work is quite literally for you if you're growing, if you're evolving, if something inside you is shifting and you're ready to feel it more deeply, even if you can't quite explain it yet, right? It's for you if you've been carrying something heavy and you're ready to let some of it go. Or if you're not feeling heavy at all, you're just curious and open and wanting to feel more connected to yourself. It's for you if your mind has been noisy, but your body is asking for stillness. If you want to feel clearer, lighter, more at home in your own skin. It's for you if you've been doing the work, right? But something still feels stuck. Or if you're just starting out and you want to explore your energy in a way that feels safe and spacious. You don't need a big reason. You really don't. You don't need to have the perfect words. If it feels like something in you is leaning towards this, that's enough. Honestly, that is enough. That is the nudge, because this work will always meet you wherever you are. So with all of that explaining, I really just want to come back in and thank you again for being here with me, listening to me today. Whether you're brand new to this space or you've been walking along here with me for a while now, I am just so glad and so deeply, deeply grateful that we've landed here together. I really hope that this episode gave you more clarity, not just on what Reiki, universal healing, energy healing is, or what RIM is, but how they might support you in this season of your life as well. There's a reason that I don't offer fast fixes or flashy promises, This work isn't about chasing a particular result. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's really about returning to yourself over and over and over again, time and time again. And doing that, doing that in such a way that it feels soft, and you're doing it with intention and with space to feel what's real for you, not anybody else. Like I said, you don't need to wait for a breakdown to start healing. You don't need to have it all figured out by any means, right? Like sometimes the next step is simply listening to the nudge, letting your body just exhale and choosing to be held in a different way as well, right? So, like I said, if you feel that gentle pull to explore a little bit more, everything is linked in the show notes below. You'll find, like I said, session bookings, a beautiful free resource called Shadows to Sovereignty, and a few ways to start gently tapping in if you're just arriving into this world. And just another little thing, if you're ready to book your very first session, there is also going to be a special code in the show notes to receive 10% off, just as a little welcome gift to welcome you into this space and into my world. All right, my loves, it has been an absolute pleasure. I promise I won't leave it so long next time. And I will definitely speak to you again very, very soon.